The story begins in a land called Egypt, a long, long time ago. The Egyptian king, called Pharaoh, was a cruel and fearful man. He saw that the Israelite people living in his country were growing very numerous and strong. Worried they might one day fight against him, Pharaoh decided to make them his slaves. He forced them to build great cities and work in the fields under the hot sun. But still, the Israelite families grew. In his anger, Pharaoh gave a terrible command. He ordered that every baby boy born to the Israelite families must be thrown into the great Nile River. In one Israelite family, a mother had a beautiful baby boy. For 3 months, she hid him in her home, listening for the soldiers' footsteps. When she could hide him no longer, she made a careful plan. She wove a little basket from reeds and coated it with sticky tar to make it waterproof. She placed her sleeping baby inside and carried the basket down to the river's edge. She gently set it among the tall grasses where the princess of Egypt, Pharaoh's own daughter, always came to bathe. The baby's big sister, Miriam, stayed nearby to watch what would happen. Sure enough, the princess came to the river with her servants. She saw the strange little basket and sent a servant to fetch it. When she opened the lid, the baby began to cry. Her heart was filled with pity. She knew this was one of the Hebrew babies. Just then, Miriam bravely stepped forward. "Would you like me to find an Israelite woman to nurse the baby for you?" she asked. The princess agreed, so Miriam ran and brought the baby's own mother. The princess said to the mother, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." It was a wonderful secret. When the boy was older, his mother brought him to the palace. The princess adopted him as her own son and named him Moses, which means drawn out of the water. So Moses grew up inside the grand palace of Pharaoh. He wore fine clothes, ate the best food, and was taught all the wisdom and magic of Egypt. He lived like a prince, surrounded by gold and servants. But deep inside, Moses knew the truth. He knew he was not truly Egyptian. In his heart, he remembered the songs and stories of his real family, the Israelite slaves. When Moses was a grown man, he went out to see how his own people, the Israelites, were living. He saw the heavy loads they carried and the harsh treatment from the Egyptian taskmasters. It made his heart ache. One day, he saw an Egyptian guard beating an Israelite slave terribly. Moses looked around, and seeing no one else, he made a sudden, angry choice. He struck the Egyptian and killed him. He quickly buried the man in the sand, hoping his secret was safe. The next day, Moses went out again. This time, he saw 2 Israelite men fighting with each other. "Why are you hurting your own brother?" Moses asked, the one who had started the fight. The man glared at him and said, "Who made you our prince and judge? Are you going to kill me like you killed that Egyptian?" Moses was filled with fear. His secret was known, and soon Pharaoh heard the news and ordered that Moses be killed. Moses had no choice. He ran for his life. He left behind the glittering palace, his fine robes, and his royal title. He ran all the way to a distant desert land called Midian. Tired and alone, he sat by a well. When some shepherdesses came to water their sheep, some other shepherds chased them away. Moses, still a helper at heart, stood up and defended the women and watered their flock for them. Their father, a priest named Jethro, was so grateful he invited Moses to live with them. Moses married one of the daughters, Zipporah, and became a shepherd, caring for his father-in-law's sheep. For 40 long years, Moses lived in the quiet desert. The prince of Egypt was gone. Now he was a simple shepherd, with a staff in his hand, leading sheep across lonely mountains. He learned the ways of the wilderness. He had lots of time to think and wonder about his life and his people back in Egypt. He probably thought his important days were over, but God was teaching him patience. God was preparing him for a job that needed a humble heart, not a royal crown. One ordinary day, Moses led his flock deep into the desert near a mountain called Horeb. There he saw something impossible. A bush was on fire, blazing with bright flames, but the leaves and branches were not burning up. It just kept burning and burning. "This is amazing," Moses said to himself. "I must go closer and see why this bush is not burning up." When Moses stepped closer, a voice called from the middle of the flames, "Moses, Moses!" Moses trembled and answered, "Here I am." The voice said, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." It was the voice of God. God said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers. So I have come down to rescue them. I am sending you to Pharaoh. You will bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses was terrified. "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" he asked. "I am nobody. I am slow of speech." But God promised, "I will be with you." God gave Moses his special holy name, "I am who I am." He gave miracles to perform to prove God sent him. He even said Moses' brother Aaron could do the talking, but Moses still felt afraid and not good enough. Finally, after talking with God for a long time, Moses obeyed. He left his sheep with Jethro, took his wife and sons, and started the long walk back to Egypt, carrying only his shepherd's staff. Back in Egypt, Moses and Aaron gathered the Israelite leaders. Aaron told them everything God had said, and Moses did the miracles God gave him. The people believed and bowed down to worship God. Then the brothers went to the great Pharaoh himself. "The God of Israel says, 'Let my people go so they may hold a festival for me in the wilderness,'" they declared. Pharaoh laughed at them. "Who is this God that I should obey him?" he sneered. "I will not let Israel go." Instead, he made the slaves work even harder. It seemed like Moses' mission had failed before it began. But God was just beginning to show his power. He told Pharaoh that his hard heart would be challenged by great wonders. One after another, terrible plagues fell upon Egypt because Pharaoh refused to listen. The Nile River turned to blood. Frogs covered the land. Gnats and flies swarmed everywhere. Animals died. People broke out in painful sores. Hail and locusts destroyed the crops. Darkness covered the land for 3 days. Each time, Pharaoh promised to let the people go if Moses would stop the plague, but each time he changed his mind when the trouble was gone. The final plague was the most serious of all. God told Moses that the angel of death would pass through Egypt. To be kept safe, every Israelite family had to sacrifice a lamb and paint its blood on the doorframes of their house. That night, they ate a special meal of roast lamb, bitter herbs, and bread made without yeast, ready to leave in a hurry. They called it the Passover meal because the angel of death would pass over any house marked with the blood. In every Egyptian home, from the palace to the prison, the oldest son died. A great cry of sorrow rose across Egypt. That very night, a broken Pharaoh finally commanded, "Go, leave my people." So the Israelites, after 430 years of slavery, marched out of Egypt. They were not alone. God went before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night to guide them. But Pharaoh changed his mind one last time. He chased after them with his entire army, all his horses and chariots. The Israelites were trapped with the Red Sea in front of them and the Egyptian army behind them. They cried out to Moses in fear. Moses answered with great faith, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Then God told Moses to raise his staff and stretch out his hand over the sea to divide the water. Moses obeyed. A strong east wind blew all that night, and God made a path right through the sea, with walls of water on their left and right. The whole nation of Israel walked across on dry ground. When the Egyptians charged in after them, Moses stretched out his hand again. The walls of water crashed down, and the entire army was swept away. On the other side, the people sang and danced for joy. Moses' journey, however, was not finished. He now had to lead this great nation through the wilderness to a new home. At a mountain called Sinai, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments and laws for how to live as God's special people. Moses spent the rest of his life, 40 more years, leading, teaching, and praying for them, even when they complained and made mistakes. He never entered the beautiful promised land himself, but he saw it from a mountaintop before he died.